Hello and welcome back to Conspiracy Couple Podcast. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we are back with part 2 of our Antarctica Theories episode. So, before we get started, of course, you should listen to part 1 if you haven't, because you will miss Geography with Marisa, a segment that I find is very, very informative and important. Also, listen to part 1. If you are watching us on YouTube, hello. Nice to see you. You will notice we're in the same clothes because we just batch recorded these 2 episodes.
Back to back.
Back to back. We took a small 10-minute TikTok break. You know, get our creative juices flowing, get our minds right. But we're back. We're here. Yeah. If you're not following us or watching us on YouTube, you should subscribe. Conspiracy Couple Podcast is the name. It's in our link tree. And you should like this video. You should subscribe to our channel. You should turn on post notifications. And we also have a couple other social medias. We have Instagram, which is Conspiracy Couple. It's where we post all of our updates on the show and where we post pictures of the conspiracy cats, Nova and Domino. Nova is currently in a very playful mood. So,
she just woke up from her nap.
Yeah,
so
she took a long nap. And if
you
you're a
might
parent,
hear something in the background.
You know what happens when the baby wakes up from a long nap. So
I would say no. I think that's a little bit different.
I don't think it's.
I don't think babies start running and jumping around.
Yeah, you know how when newborn babies wake up from their nap, they immediately start playing with their toys and climbing on the sofa.
I don't think that's quite what they do, but
I mean, I don't know. But yes, we also have Twitter, ccpodcast22, and email conspiracycouple22@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's all I got.
I don't have anything.
Nothing.
No, I don't do any of this part.
I don't do any of this part. Okay. Well, if you haven't listened, we're just going to do a quick recap of the theories that we talked about in our last episode about Antarctica. Because I want to keep it fresh in people's brains.
But it's a new episode. They don't need to know.
No, I'm doing a recap.
If they want to know, they should go listen to the last episode.
I'm doing a recap anyways. And
I'm not listening then.
Okay, well, I don't care. So we talked about Antarctica, how it is a continent that's full of mysteries, full of conspiracy theories, because it is very much unexplored still, and it's super inhospitable to humans. Very cold, very windy, and it's covered in a huge sheet of ice that's as deep as 3 miles in some places. So because of that, we have a lot of conspiracy theories, and the ones that we talked about last week were that Antarctica is home to proof that aliens exist, and that potentially there is an ancient alien civilization that was frozen underneath the ice, or that there is still an alien civilization living underneath the ice. And we talked about the sightings of supposed UFOs on Google Earth. We talked about the possibility of a second Area 51 in Antarctica. And we talk about the pyramids and the possibility of pyramids and what that could mean in regards to ancient life and ancient aliens who may have come or had come to Antarctica and made these pyramids. I just paused because Nova literally just ran. I thought she was going to attack Domino.
She was about to pounce, and then she stopped when Domino looked at her. That was really weird.
Domino's bigger than me. I made a mistake.
That was really weird.
Yeah. And we talked about the possibility of ancient diseases, and coupled with the alien theory that there are alien diseases that are frozen under the permafrost or the ice, and that those could come back and infect us, and that we wouldn't be able to fight those off. And we talked about the hollow earth and the potential that the entrance to the hollow earth is in Antarctica, and that aliens and dinosaurs and the Illuminati live inside the hollow earth, and that the earth is actually a hot cocoa bomb. So that's what we talked about last week. Today
but you already knew that because you listened.
But you already knew that. Just a little refresher. This week we have, I think, 1, 2, 3 more theories. These ones are a little bit more big, I think. The last one is like the biggest one. So we're just going to dive right in, and we are going to talk about the theory that you actually mentioned in the first episode when I asked if you knew anything about it. And you said... I can't handle you right now. He's freaking me out. If you're
I'm curious.
You said, do people think that Atlantis is under Antarctica?
I did say that.
So yes, one of the theories is that Antarctica is the home of the lost city of Atlantis. So if you are a longtime listener, you know that we actually did an episode all about the lost city of Atlantis. So, of course, I recommend you go back and listen to that one. It was one of our very first episodes. But basically, the theory of Atlantis is based on Plato's work, and Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, and his work discussed this utopian society that was perfect. And it was very technologically advanced, and this society was like these really incredibly smart, good-looking people who could make these great technological advancements that we still can't make. And that something happened, some sort of a tragedy happened, and this whole society was swallowed up by the sea, or it was destroyed, and that it's now missing. And there's this question of whether the society ever existed, and if it's still missing, if we could find the remnants of Atlantis somewhere, or if it was just a work of fiction proposed by Plato to represent the idea of a utopian society. There is also the question of whether Atlantis was influenced by extraterrestrials, or whether the people of Atlantis themselves were this extraterrestrial mixed with human race of people, and that is what enabled them to make all these advancements. So, typically a lot of people think that Atlantis was near Greece. Well, Plato's Greek, he wrote about things that were Greek, and travel wasn't a huge thing back then. So, of course, if Atlantis existed and Plato was writing this biography about them, it would have been in Greece. And Greece is a very tropical place, and so we think that there's this island that's tropical. However, some people believe that Atlantis actually existed closer to the South Pole, and that somehow they were flash frozen due to a shift of the Earth's pole, and now the remnants of that society exist under the ice of Antarctica. So the US is actually trying to map everything under the ice in Antarctica to learn more about it and its history, as well as to track the effects of climate change. And conspiracy theorists believe that these images prove Atlantis is hidden under the ice. So there are some images, they say, show the remnants of this society. So now we're going to talk about the crustal displacement theory. So this is the idea that Antarctica wasn't always where it was, and that it shifted to its current location over a period of about 2,000 years, which would explain why it wasn't always covered in ice. So if you remember, we talked about the Phineas map in our last part, which was this map from the 1500s, which showed a landmass that looked just like Antarctica, but that was temperate. It was not covered in ice. And there was the proposal that at one point Antarctica had a very temperate climate, but that something happened and that it became frozen. So the crustal displacement theory proposes that at some point, some catastrophe occurred which plunged Antarctica into its current climate. So in total, this theory purports that the continent moved about 2,000 miles as a result of the moving of the crust of the Earth. So this also goes along with the idea that all of the continents moved at some point in history.
Pangea.
Yes. And that there was this huge landmass Pangea, but that because of the shifting tectonic plates, they all moved and eventually settled into their current places. My question is, are the continents still moving? Why did they stop moving?
I feel like they are technically still moving, but I don't know. And we don't, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why I started to answer that like I had an answer.
I know. I
do
was like, he sounds really confident right now. I think it's hard to quantify that kind of a thing. But my thinking is, if the continents moved, why did they stop moving? Like, what happened? So, we should also note that the crustal displacement theory is not supported by science. There is a small bit of evidence to suggest that there was something called a reverse cooling period, in which the climate of Antarctica became warmer very quickly, which lends itself to the possibility that it could have supported an ancient civilization such as Atlantis. And as I've said, some of the images that have been produced of what exists under the ice look somewhat like the structures that could have been made by humans, as well as the fact that there's like a whole lake under the ice. So one of the images I saw was this like ice sheet, and it looked like columns, and it looked like, you know, when you see Greek architecture, it has like the columns. It kind of looked like that, but completely in ice. And people are like, oh, that's Atlantis. But scientists say it's just ice. But I don't really know. If they're mapping what's under the ice, could they really even say this is definitively just ice if they haven't mapped all of it yet? What do you think?
I mean, I feel like they could make an educated guess. But I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not.
Do you think that there's a possibility that that Atlantis is under?
No.
I think, if I remember correctly, in our last episode about Atlantis, you said you didn't think it existed.
Correct.
So, if you said...
So, therefore, I do not think it's under Antarctica.
Yeah, I think, well, this theory hinges on the fact that you believe Atlantis is a real place.
Right.
Personally, I don't really think Atlantis is a real place. I think it was a literary device. However, if Atlantis was a real place, I am of the belief that it would be in Greece.
If Atlantis
it would be part of the Greek islands.
Also, if Atlantis was a real place, I don't think they would have had futuristic technology. I think it would have just been people, and it was maybe this place called Atlantis, and maybe for the time had like technology that was like futuristic. But I mean, this is Plato's time we're talking about, so like, I don't know what had been invented by then, but I'm pretty sure like a toilet hadn't. So maybe they had like, you know, a futuristic toilet.
Yeah,
that was them being the peak of society. And then they fell into the water.
I believe Atlantis was
fake.
A literary device. I don't think that it's a real place. I think it could have been based off of a real culture. However, this idea that this country fell into the sea, or this civilization just completely fell into the sea, nah.
It's not like people have never written about futuristic things that don't exist.
No, never. It's not like there's a whole...
Millions of books.
Millions of dystopian books. I mean, I guess the idea is utopian versus dystopian.
It kind of turns dystopia because it falls into the sea.
That's true. I mean, my only thing with this theory is that I feel like scientists can't say definitively this is like 100% just ice. Because they're still mapping the ice.
Yeah.
There's 3 miles of, in some places 3 miles of ice. And if they are still mapping the ice, they can't say, no, this is not possible, when they haven't even finished looking at everything.
Yeah.
Like, when they have finished mapping all of the ice in Antarctica and say, I know what's under every piece, like, inch of ice, then I'll be like, yeah, totally. But they can't say definitively no, because they haven't finished exploring everything yet.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Anyways. Next theory. Also, back to the Atlantis thing. I think that people who believe in Atlantis are like, oh, well, it's frozen, and there's all these, like, places under the ice, so definitely it could exist. Like,
sure.
They want it to exist somewhere, and it hasn't been found yet, so Antarctica's a perfect place.
Sure.
Stop saying sure.
Sure.
Say it one more time, and it's just the Conspiracy Marisa podcast. It's just like the Conspiracy Marisa. Okay, so this next theory. Antarctica doesn't actually exist. It is instead a giant ice wall that surrounds the flat Earth to keep people in and keep them from finding the edge of the Earth.
Then where do penguins come from?
So obviously I'm talking about the flat Earth theory. So the flat Earth theory is another one of those theories that...
We haven't covered that yet, have we?
Nope.
Surprising.
I do plan on... Okay, the reason we haven't covered it is because there's so much.
A 4-parter.
Yeah, it's going to be like a 4 or 5-parter. So essentially, we're going to cover that theory in depth because it's a biggie. It might be kind of like when we did the Illuminati for our season finale. We might do the flat Earth for our season 2 finale. Because it's a big one. But the flat Earth theory, in case the name is not clear, is the theory that the Earth is not round, as the globe is depicted and
not spherical.
And not spherical as science would purport, but instead is flat.
Because it could still be a circle.
Is a disc. And that there's this whole cover-up. The government does not want you to believe that the Earth is flat for whatever reason, and that Antarctica is this big ice wall that surrounds the flat Earth. So this ice wall is apparently 150 feet high and hundreds of meters thick. And it surrounds Antarctica, or surrounds the place where Antarctica would be, so that people can't fall off the edge of the Earth. And some flat earthers believe that the ice wall ends at some point, and some believe that it goes on forever in all directions. So initially, flat earthers based this theory on the writings of a British explorer, James Clark Ross, who explored Antarctica in the 1800s, with him discussing an icy wall that he found while he was there. So the journals were actually discussing an ice shelf, not an ice wall, but he described it as an ice wall that was named after him. And it actually recently broke apart. And it was significantly smaller in scale than what flat earthers believe the ice wall surrounding Antarctica is. But apparently this ice wall is also full of military officials who are prepared to shoot anyone down who attempt to go near it and see the truth. And apparently civilians are not allowed to enter Antarctica. So
what are they hiding?
The Flat Earth Society also says that this is the reason that commercial planes are not allowed to fly over Antarctica. So if you ask officials, are commercial planes allowed to fly over Antarctica? Yes. They will say, yes, we are allowed to fly over Antarctica. However, they don't. They usually don't.
Because it's not... it would take longer to go that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and they give two main reasons. One is the weather.
Yeah.
And the weather does not provide favorable flight conditions. And there's no reason to fly over Antarctica. It's literally the bottom of the globe.
They don't fly over the North Pole either.
There's no reason. It's pretty out of the way of any commercial flight route. And it would require a lot of extra fuel. And they wouldn't be able to just land on Antarctica and refuel.
You're right.
So the reasons they give are practical. But the Flat Earth Society is like, no, it's because they're not allowed to. So a quote from the Flat Earth Society in regards to the ice wall. Beyond the 150-foot ice wall is anyone's guess. How far the ice extends, how it terminates, and what exists beyond it are questions to which no present human experience can reply. I think that the people who live at that scientific base in Antarctica might be able to answer those questions. But, I don't know. So yeah, the ice wall, that's a big tenet of the flat earth theory. Well, okay, if the earth is flat, couldn't you just fall off? Like, couldn't you just, like, go to the edge and fall off? Why is our water not falling off? Why are our fish not flying off into space? Well, the reason is the ice wall that surrounds the whole earth and keeps us from falling off. But the government doesn't want you to know about it. So they have military officials there who will shoot you if you come. However, the thing is, remember we talked about the Antarctic Treaty, that no government can have a military presence there.
Right, but they're not...
Is it the whole Earth that gets together?
Yeah, it's the Earth Armada.
The One World Order military.
Also, why wouldn't they want us to know that the Earth is flat? What?
That's okay. I don't.
Where's the benefit?
I don't know.
We can get more into that when we actually cover this theory, but it makes no sense why there would be any sort of cover up for the, like, what do we gain from the Earth being round, being spherical?
That is something I have no idea. It's like, usually I can kind of get into the head of a conspiracy theorist, but in this one I'm like, who cares? If the Earth is flat, it's flat. Who cares? Like, the government's not making money off of the Earth being round.
Right.
Like, the government's not getting any special power off the Earth being round. I mean, as far as I'm aware, but I don't know. If you guys have some insight into that, let us know.
Explain, flat earthers.
Please explain. Yeah, if you're a flat earther, there's actually a very large society of flat earthers. So
around the world.
So if you're a flat earther, can you let us know? Like, I'm not trying to be rude.
I am.
But can you let us know, like, what the government would benefit from covering this up? Like,
Yeah, I'm genuinely curious about that, because I've never understood why the government would say that the Earth is round if it's not.
Yeah, what's the
point?
point?
What is the point?
Also, we can see Antarctica. Like, if you go on Google Earth, you can see Antarctica.
Oh, you silly sheeple person. Google Earth isn't real.
That's true. Although, my freaking house was real.
Well, yeah, but they fudge it to make it spherical.
But
again.
There are documentaries where you can see Antarctica, where you can see, the land.
That's
you can see it's not an ice
it's all
wall.
fake.
Anyways, you don't think? What do you think, Ethan?
No. I believe that the Earth is round. Because it makes no sense why it wouldn't be, and why it would be covered up, and also because there's literal pictures of the Earth.
Go off. Anyways.
I'm done. That's all I have to say.
I say go off. He's like, no.
No, I don't think.
Done.
I don't think I will.
I'm gonna stop.
I don't think I will.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, I'm gonna preface this last theory with, if you hear a strange noise, Nova is playing with a ping pong ball on the hardwood floor in the kitchen. And so if you hear banging, it's a ping pong ball. So,
and a cat.
And a cat.
Who really likes playing with a ping pong ball.
Yeah. She is...
If you can't hear it, then we're not saying anything right now.
Yeah. Anyways, so the last theory that we're going to talk about is the longest theory. And that's the theory that Nazis fled to Antarctica after World War II and established a base there. And
I thought the theory was that they established a base in Argentina.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
So not only do they have a base there, but they also have UFOs there.
What?
So this theory, it ties in all the theories that we talked about so far, pretty much. So, as you mentioned...
What about Hollow Earth?
Yeah.
What about Flat Earth?
No.
Ah.
So, as you mentioned, there are a huge number of believers who think that there were a number of Nazi officers that escaped Germany after World War II and were able to establish colonies in other places, specifically South America. So this is another huge topic that I'm planning on doing another episode on. But essentially the proof is that there are pockets in South America and in South American countries that are home to huge German populations. And they have a lot of white German people who speak German. And this is because many people think that it's the direct result of the escape of Nazi officers. There was recently a Nazi officer who was arrested in South America and tried for war crimes. It was like a 95-year-old woman.
Wow.
But this little old, or it was either a little old lady or a little old man who was arrested and tried for war crimes.
Dang.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. I mean, how do you have any evidence at that point?
I don't know, but...
It's wild.
I mean, that makes my heart happy. Justice will always... You gotta get justice. Anyways.
Justice will always.
Justice will always.
Just remember
you know what
that.
they say.
Just remember that. Justice will always. We gotta get that justice.
So, Germany had a secret weapons program during World War II. And they created these technologically advanced weapons and planes to aid in the war. As we all know, regardless of these secret weapons, they still lost the war.
They did.
They lost the war.
Yeah.
So the head of this secret weapons committee was an official named Kamler. Last name was Kamler. And many
That doesn't sound very German.
Okay, well, anyways, many people believe he was German, all right? Many people believe that he and a small group of soldiers and scientists, so he got a little team, soldiers and scientists, they escaped to Antarctica following the war instead of South America, with the goal of building a colony or permanent settlement on the continent.
Yeah, you're telling me that hold on. When remind me again, when was the first time that Antarctica was explored?
The 1800s.
The 1800s. And do you know when like people first started like living there like longer?
No.
Because I'm like, you're telling me that all the way back then they were able to do that and like figure out.
1945.
Yeah, you're telling me they were able to figure out how to live there long term.
Well, we're gonna get into that. So Kamler actually did escape the country and was never captured, while his team of scientists and all of his work was captured and sent to America at the conclusion of the war. So in 1938 to 1939, so right at the beginning of World War II, Germany did have an expedition in Antarctica where they were apparently able to claim a portion of the continent for Germany, and where they were apparently very successful in building underground settlements. So it's reported that Hitler and the Nazis were very interested in Antarctica and wanting to explore it thoroughly. The question would be why? Well, apparently they were supposedly looking for the origin point of the Aryan race and believed that Antarctica harbored secrets under the ice that would grant them access to technological advancements. Supposedly, there was even the belief that the Nazis believed there was a link to extraterrestrials living under the ice.
Wow.
And some even thought that the Nazis thought that there were societies living inside the Earth, the hollow Earth theory, and were trying to locate them. So we do know that Hitler was kind of involved in like the occult and supernatural kind of things, and was very obsessed with this Aryan race. Idea. So many people believe that this drove them to Antarctica and that they were able to build these underground cities or caverns that were under the ice and would pretty much be hidden to the rest of the world. So as I said, in Antarctica there are caves or caverns, and you can go in and there's like multiple levels. So that's where apparently they built their base. And apparently the base was called New Berlin or Base 22. And some people even believe that the Germans found already made cities and evidence of historic civilizations underground, and that they took over those civilizations for their own use. So some also believe that they were able to make contact with aliens, such as gray aliens or reptilians, receive technology from them, and reverse engineer that technology to create their own advanced technology. And some people also think that these underground cave societies were home to the Illuminati. The question here would be...
The Illuminati?
Okay, that was good.
Thank you.
The question here would be, why haven't we seen this advanced technology yet?
Right.
If they received this technology in right after World War II ended, don't you think they would use it to strike back and try and get back in the war and, win?
Yeah, I would think that.
So one theory is that even though the technology was not ready by the time World War II ended, it is still hidden under the ice and is waiting for the time when the New World Order or Illuminati is ready to use it and achieve their goals of world domination. So there is also the theory that Hitler himself made it to Antarctica by faking his own suicide and escaping to Antarctica via submarine. So some people believe, the widely held belief is that Hitler killed himself, him and Eva Braun, which was his partner, girlfriend, and they died. Well, other people think that Hitler is actually not still alive, but faked that.
Well, he could still be alive.
Had a body
his
double
death. Yeah.
that he killed to look like him, to trick people, so he could escape. So some people believe that Hitler and Eva Braun's remains are preserved inside this secret settlement with the goal of eventually being able to clone them one day in the future, and kind of they can come back and be reborn. So they believe that this happened by Hitler and possibly Braun fleeing to Argentina, where they were then picked up in a boat and transferred to Antarctica. Of course, there's no evidence that Hitler survived, or that Hitler made it to Argentina, or that there was a boat that picked him up and took him to Antarctica. And we also know that at this point in time, like 2022, cloning a human is not scientifically possible. And it definitely wasn't possible, I mean, as far as we know, unless they did have this alien technology in 1946.
But if they did have alien technology, then why did they lose?
That's the question. They still lost, regardless. Yeah. And of note, there is no evidence that the Nazis were able to build a base there, or that they even had these large-scale expeditions to establish a base. And if you remember, we talked about the Antarctic Treaty at the very beginning of our first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Germany entered in and signed the Antarctic Treaty. So that made it so that no country, including Germany, could establish a military presence on Antarctica. And that leads to two different kind of views on why they would sign this treaty. One is that they signed the treaty and honored the treaty and never established a military presence there. The second, more sinister, is that they entered this treaty because they knew they had bases already there and they wanted to keep their bases. And by signing the treaty, it would keep other countries or military powers out of their area and from finding their bases.
Interesting.
That makes sense, doesn't
it?
Yeah,
that would make sense.
So they're like, well, if we don't sign the treaty, we're going to look bad, and this is going to make them think that we're hiding something. So the thing is, if we sign this, everyone else is signing it too. They can't come looking for us, kind of a thing. So a practical reason for why they might have wanted a base there, this was in one of the videos I watched, and of course, all my videos are going to be linked in the show notes. And this boils down to a very surprising and common factor. Margarine.
Like the butter substitute?
Like the butter substitute. Margarine. Why? So apparently, Germans consumed a lot of margarine at this time.
Interesting.
That famous thing when you go to Bavarian villages, they have pretzels and they have beer and they have margarine.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So, apparently, one of the main ingredients of margarine was whale oil. Oh. I don't think that if you looked at your margarine, it would still say that.
So, it was whale oil.
It was whale oil. So, it was imported to Germany at the time. And apparently Hitler was concerned that these other countries would cut off his supply. Because... I got to have my margarine.
Because,
in times of war, the first thing that people are thinking about is like, oh my gosh, I really hope they don't stop me from getting my margarine.
You do cut off food supply.
That's true.
That is a war tactic.
That's true.
So, I mean, it's not unreasonable.
So, what did he want? He wanted a whaling base in Antarctica so he could get his whale oil for his margarine.
Wasn't he allies with Japan?
And they had whaling.
They're an island. There's tons of whales and ways to get whale oil.
Okay, but what about the U-boats?
Well, yeah. I guess.
This is literally, I have this tiny little paragraph about margarine. That's practical, but we're really more focusing on the alien stuff.
Well, I feel like we should talk more about the margarine. It's very strange.
That's the weirdest thing about this.
We need to build a base on Antarctica. Why? So that we don't lose our margarine. The thing is you still have to get the whale oil from Antarctica to Germany.
You gotta still.
Which then you have to pass it through all this other stuff. So the supply still technically could be cut off.
Yes.
So that doesn't actually answer that question. It doesn't fix the problem. It kind of makes it harder.
We still have a margarine issue here.
It would still make it. It would make it harder almost.
Yeah.
From wherever they were getting their margarine in the first place, or their whale oil, I guess.
Anyways.
Anyway.
So now is it okay if I move up the margarine?
I would like to spend 5 more minutes on the margarine.
I'm going to just move along, okay?
Okay.
You can talk about margarine at the end.
Sure.
So Operation High Jump. So that is from 1946 to 1947. A team of Americans were sent on a mission to Antarctica to scout the area and to see if Nazis were there and to prepare for an attack by the Soviet Union through Antarctica, as the Cold War was kind of starting to get started.
It was getting colder.
The Cold War was getting a little chillier at this point.
Yeah, which is why they went to Antarctica.
Yeah. So the
It was
U.S.
getting colder.
also wanted to establish a presence in Antarctica, as it was the previously uncontrolled terrain, and they viewed it as potentially a great asset in the Cold War. However, this last part of the expedition was not made
Sounds
public.
like they were kind of going against the whole treaty.
The treaty wasn't signed until 1951. So the team was led by accomplished Arctic explorer, a man named Admiral Richard Byrd.
From the last episode.
Remember in the last episode when I said, keep the name Admiral Richard E. Byrd in the back of your head.
With the diary on Amazon.
Bring
$25.
Admiral Byrd back to the front of your head.
Or remind yourself of who he is.
Remind yourself.
Go read
Pull
your
up a
copy of
picture.
his diary that you bought.
Pause the episode. Read the whole diary.
Well, they already read it. They just have to
Refresh
remember
it. Go back to the highlighted sections in your diary.
You think they annotated his diary?
100%. Look at your pictures that you've saved of him. And
the life-size cardboard cutout you made of him.
Yes. And get your cup of coffee, sit down, and we're going to be talking about Admiral Byrd again. So this was a huge voyage. Operation High Jump. They had over 40...
Why is it called High Jump?
I don't know. They had over 4,700 men, 13 ships, an aircraft carrier, seaplanes, and a lot of equipment. And it was the largest voyage to Antarctica at this time.
Wow.
So they had enough supplies to be there for about 8 months. However, the voyage ended abruptly after only 16 weeks, which is
4 months.
4 months, so half of the time they had prepared. And there were rumors swirling that they had run into something or someone that made them leave. So apparently some stories that came from this voyage were of flying saucers coming out of the water that could shoot laser beams and were able to cut ships in half.
What about an ancient civilization that was living under the earth?
We're not there yet.
Well, you mentioned that in the last one that he said
he didn't talk about that in Operation High Jump.
What?
So theorists think that this kind of tech that they saw freaked them out and sent them hightailing it back home.
That doesn't make sense.
If I was on a voyage and I saw a flying saucer come out of the water, yeah, I would be leaving.
Their job was to go and try and see if there were things there.
Yeah.
So they find something and they leave?
I would. I'd be like, okay, bye.
But you're not a part of this expedition and you wouldn't be.
No, they wouldn't want me.
No.
However, this has never been confirmed, and the reason why they left is not known.
Probably because people were dying because it's hard to live in Antarctica.
So if the government was aware of these incredibly high-tech weapons and aircraft that an enemy power had access to, don't you think this would have been made known?
Yeah, I feel like they would have been kind of worried about it.
Like, especially so close after the end of World War II, the Allied powers wouldn't have let this kind of thing fly.
Yeah.
I put LOL in my notes because I wouldn't have let this thing fly. A flying saucer. Can we take a moment? That was pretty good, wasn't it?
A moment of silence.
That was really good.
For the death of comedy.
That was good!
I mean, it's better than some of the puns I've said today, so.
100%. Okay, also, if ships are supposedly being cut in half with laser beams from flying saucers, don't you think that would have been difficult to hide?
A little bit.
You enter the voyage with a certain number of ships, and then you come back with less ships, and one of them has been cut in half.
Well, I don't think you come back with that one.
I feel like that would create some controversy.
I feel like of all the ships that you come back with, you don't come back with the one that's cut in half.
They'd be like, where's so-and-so? And they'd be like, who? Like, is that what happened? Like, they just, you can't leave with this many and come back with less, and then that not be a thing.
Yeah. Especially only being there half the amount of time you're supposed to.
Right. Like, I feel like the whole laser beams cutting ships in half, like, I feel like that's very much either it happened or it didn't. Like,
Also, if potentially the Nazis had access to laser beams that could cut ships in half, why did they lose?
that's a good question.
They have laser beams. They could have won the war, but they lost.
Lost. I don't know. So apparently Admiral Byrd himself made some comments about the voyage that led people to believe that the Nazis were able to make UFOs and had them in Antarctica. So he had said something about how the U.S. needed to be prepared to fight a war against aircraft that was able to fly at speeds much quicker than what U.S. tech was capable of. So this led people to think the Nazis had built flying saucers that they had been working on during the war, and that Byrd and his team found them while on their expedition in
Sounds
Antarctica.
like Byrd might have been kind of Fruit Loopy.
Fruit Loopy?
You know, like the cereal. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? That's a
Yeah,
different cereal.
Byrd sounds like he definitely had some interesting opinions.
Do you get it?
Yes.
Do you get it, though?
What? Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs?
And Fruit Loopy.
Of course I do.
Both cereal mascots are birds.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's pretty good. My Let It Fly thing was a little bit better, I think.
I disagree. It'd be easier to get, but mine was better.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if he said these things at all, because these are all reported.
Oh, so we might not have even said any of it.
But this is believed that he said this.
But it's also believed that the Earth is flat by some people. So
You got me there.
sometimes when people think things, they're wrong.
Sometimes when people think.
Sometimes when people think, they actually don't.
Whoa.
Open your mind's eye. Just kidding.
Okay. So, Ethan, what do you think?
I don't.
We know.
About all of them?
Well, specifically about this one.
Oh, no.
Or...
Absolutely not. If the Nazis had access to advanced technology or something in Antarctica, A, they would have probably used it in the war that they lost. And B, probably would have made an appearance again after they lost.
Yeah. Especially if Hitler survived.
I'm also I just don't buy that they figured out a way in 1946 to hide out in Antarctica long term. Because how long has it been? 70 years? Has it been 70 years yet?
Yeah.
They figured out a way to live for 70 years in Antarctica in the 40s.
So the question is then, are they still there? Or did this
Maybe
little
if
group
they
go...
did have a base, they died. Because it's Antarctica. And there's no way they had enough resources to live for 70 years in Antarctica.
Yeah. And I feel like you would have, had to get supplies. So you would have had to have boats
You would have had to have a ton of margarine.
So much margarine. So much. Anyways, but you would have had to have, boats come and bring you supplies. And I feel like people would have started to be like, what's the deal here?
Why are they transporting so much margarine?
If there's a bunch of boats coming to Antarctica all the time. And I feel like, especially now, obviously we haven't explored everything in Antarctica. But I feel like if there was this group of people living in the caverns in the last 70 years, I feel like there would have been some evidence of that.
Last time I checked, humans can't live in -47 long term.
Yeah.
They usually don't work. Especially where nothing grows. Because it's all ice.
They would have had to, yes, they talk about advanced tech, but what about food?
What about food?
Did the aliens have, little greenhouses or something? I don't know. I'm thinking too much into this.
Yeah, no, I don't buy it.
Okay,
I don't buy it. I think Antarctica is just a bunch of ice.
Okay, so I was going to say, what are your final thoughts, but...
Ice.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's definitely easy to, make up a lot of theories about Antarctica. And I do think the question of, is there anything under the ice or what is under the ice is really interesting. I just kind of think it's just ice. There's a very diverse ecosystem, but it's just ice. And I would be curious to learn more about it because, like, the videos I watched were really interesting. And I think that there's, like, when something's unexplored, we as humans, like, attach a lot of, like, speculation to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I do like some of the things like the blood falls and like the singing ice and the bloop. I didn't talk about the bloop, but...
What? What's the bloop?
So there was... Do you remember when that video... There was this video that came out like a couple years ago of this like sonar sound that captured this like random like bloop noise under the water.
No.
In Antarctica.
No.
Anyways, if you know what the bloop is, it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, but I don't really think there's a ton of, like, credence to these theories. But I do think the ideas are very interesting. So, as we wind down, as we wrap up, we've already wound down. As we wrap up, let us know what you guys think. Do you think that there's truth to any of these theories? Do you have any theories that I didn't cover that you are like, no, this is true? We're super interested to hear. And we will be back in 2 weeks, our regularly scheduled programming, with another fun episode. So thanks you guys for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.